Little girl calls 911 crying, "Something's wrong with me." What doctors found broke everyone's heart in absolute silence and shock. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The phone rang once, then twice before a trembling voice whispered through the static. A little black girl's cry cut through the quiet air of the night shift, breaking the hum of the police dispatch room. It was 9:47 p.m. when Officer Dale Turner reached for his headset, half tired, half distracted. The lights above buzzed softly, flickering over a desk scattered with empty coffee cups and radio logs. The night was calm, too calm until he heard it. A faint sob, small and shaky. 911, what's your emergency? Dale said, voice steady but routine. Silence. Then a stuttered breath. Something's wrong with me. Her voice was tiny, fragile, like it might break if she spoke again. Dale frowned and leaned closer to the receiver. Ma'am, are you hurt? Can you tell me your name? I can't move right, the girl whimpered. Her breathing was quick, uneven. It hurts. My stomach. And my head. Dale looked up from his screen. His partner, Officer Reed, rolled his eyes. Another kid prank, Reed muttered, sipping cold coffee. They do this all the time. You know how it is. But there was something about that voice, something too raw, too real. Sweetheart, can you tell me where you are? Dale asked gently. I'm home. Mama's not here. He said I should sleep, but I can't wake up right. Her voice cracked. In the background there was a low humming sound. Maybe a refrigerator, maybe something else. Dale's hand hovered over the call log. He typed possible child medical emergency. Reed leaned back in his chair. You gonna send a patrol for that? We've had a dozen of these this month. Kids playing pretend again. Probably left the TV on. That word, kids playing, hung heavy in the air. Dale hesitated. His mind flashed to the department's policy meetings. False alarms, wasted resources, warnings about overreacting. And somewhere in that hesitation, bias slipped quietly through the cracks. Is your mama there, honey? He asked. No, she whispered. She said I was lying. She said I just want attention. The room went still. Dale leaned forward. You're not lying, okay? You did the right thing calling us. Can you tell me your name? Amaya, she said. Amaya Green. The sound of her name, so delicate, so uncertain, filled the static between them. Dale typed it slowly, letters glowing pale blue on the screen. He searched the system. No prior record, no previous calls from that number. Amaya, I'm sending someone to help you. Can you stay on the phone with me? A soft whimper. I'm trying. But it hurts too much, Reed groaned. Man, she's putting on a show. You know how these kids are. Probably wants someone to come tuck her in. Dale didn't answer. He could hear it now, her breathing shallow, struggling. A soft thud followed, maybe her hand hitting the floor. He turned down the background chatter from other dispatch lines. Amaya, are you still there? A pause, then barely audible. Please, hurry! Her voice wavered like it was fading into the air itself. Dale straightened in his seat. Something in his chest tightened. He marked the call as urgent even as Reed shook his head. You're wasting a car, Reed muttered. We've got real crimes tonight. Just send one unit, Dale said, sharper than he intended. Reed sighed and picked up his radio. Unit 12, welfare check, Maplewood Apartments 22B, possible juvenile call. Static crackled. A lazy voice answered, Copy, kid trouble again? Dale didn't respond. He stared at the blinking line on his console. Amaya was still breathing, but slower now. You said someone told you to sleep, Amaya. Yes, her words slurred. He said the medicine would make me quiet. Dale froze. Reed's smirk faded. What did she just say? The medicine, Dale repeated slowly. Who said that, Amaya? But there was no reply. Only the faint sound of breathing, then a muffled noise, and finally, nothing. Amaya, can you hear me? No answer. The hum of the fluorescent lights grew louder in the silence. Dale's fingers trembled as he pressed replay on the call recording, listening for movement, a word, anything. She said she couldn't move, he whispered. Why didn't she say what medicine? Reed shrugged. Probably fell asleep. You'll see, this will be nothing. But the way Dale's stomach tightened told him otherwise. He looked at the blinking address on his screen and whispered to himself, Please let me be wrong. Then the line went silent. And the silence lasted too long. At the dispatch desk, doubtful eyes met across the room. The soft hum of computers, and the faint smell of burnt coffee filled the stale air. The clock above the bulletin board ticked loud and steady. Slicing through the silence that followed Amaya's call, Officer Dale Turner rubbed his forehead, replaying her voice in his mind, thin, frightened, barely holding on. His partner, Officer Reed, leaned back in his chair, a smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth. "You really think that girl's in danger?" Reed asked. "Kids say weird stuff when their parents are gone. Medicine that makes me quiet. That's a bedtime story." Dale's hand lingered near the console. "Her tone wasn't fake," he said softly. "She sounded weak." "Too weak," Reed shrugged. "Weak, tired, lying, it's all the same." "It's late. Let the medics check her, not us. No reason to stir up drama in that neighborhood." That neighborhood. The words carried an invisible weight, one that everyone in the room felt but never said out loud. Dale looked up. "You mean Maplewood?" "Yeah," Reed said. "You know how it goes down there. Half those calls are noise complaints or kids crying wolf. Waste of time." A younger officer laughed under his breath. "Bet she's one of those latchkey kids again. Always alone, always making up stories for attention." The laughter felt out of place, ugly against the quiet night. Dale felt it crawl under his skin. "Dispatch sent a car already," he said firmly. "Unit 12 should be there in 2 minutes. Reed shook his head. "You'll see. It'll be nothing. We'll file the report, and by morning, her mama will be yelling about how we scared her little girl. Happens every time." Dale turned back to his computer, the blue light painting his tired eyes. He clicked through old incident logs. There it was. One entry from 6 months ago. Same address, same number. Caller hung up. No action taken. His chest tightened. He whispered under his breath, "She called before." "What's that?" Reed asked, stretching his legs. "Nothing," Dale said. But it wasn't nothing. It was a warning echoing from the past. The room grew quieter. The air conditioner buzzed above them, spitting out cold air that did nothing to ease the unease creeping in Dale's chest. He thought of her voice again. "Please. Hurry." He thought of the silence that followed. "Reed," he said after a long pause, "what if she's telling the truth?" Reed rolled his chair closer. "Then we'll deal with it. But you can't jump every time a kid from Maplewood calls. We'd never get real work done." There it was again, the quiet prejudice that sounded like procedure. "She's 9, Dale said, frustration breaking through. 9 and alone. You think that's nothing?" Reed sighed. "Dale, we've seen this before. A little black girl says she's hurt and it's chaos. Next thing you know, her mama's on the news saying we scared her kid. Don't you want to be that headline again?" The words hit like a slap. A little black girl. That was how they said it here, like a category, not a child. Dale stared at his hands. The headset cord twisted between his fingers. "I just keep thinking, what if we'd listened the first time?" Reed's tone softened, but only slightly. "You can't save every kid, man. Some people just live rough. That's life." The phrase echoed in Dale's mind, "That's life." It was what they always said when life went wrong for someone else. Through the window, red and blue lights flashed faintly in the distance. Unit 12 pulling up at the Maplewood apartments. Dale switched on the radio. "Unit 12, this is dispatch. You have contact with the juvenile." Static, then a voice, "We're here." Apartment doors locked. No response inside. Dale sat up. "Try again." "She said she couldn't move." The officer laughed faintly over the line. "If she can't move, she's sure making a lot of noise. Hear that TV? Kids these days leave it blasting all night." Dale pressed the radio button harder. "Break that door if you have to." A pause. A muffled thud. Then silence. Reed frowned. "Guess they're in." Another voice came through, lower this time, shaken. "Dispatch. We've got a female child, unconscious. Breathing shallow. Looks like... I don't know. There's bruising." Dale's throat went dry. "Repeat that." "Bruising, old ones. Fresh ones, too." Every doubtful glance in the room vanished. The officers who had laughed now stood frozen, staring at the radio like it might bite. Reed swallowed hard. "Could be an accident," he muttered weakly. But Dale already knew better. He leaned back, eyes closed. Hearing her voice again. "Something's wrong with me." They had no idea the truth would be far worse than anything they imagined. And what they found in that apartment erased every trace of doubt. Her next words shattered the silence. "Is she breathing?" Dale's voice cracked through the radio as static hissed in the background. Officer Marlin from Unit 12 panted into his mic. "Barely, she's cold, sir. Little girl's pale, real pale. We're starting CPR." The room inside the police station went still. The clock's ticking grew louder, marking every second like a drumbeat of guilt. Reed, who had been laughing minutes ago, stood frozen by the console, his face pale. Dale grabbed his jacket. "I'm heading out." "Dale, don't—" Reed started, but Dale was already out the door. The drive to Maplewood Apartments was short, but the silence inside the patrol car stretched forever. Red and blue lights flickered across empty streets, bouncing off cracked sidewalks and boarded windows. Rain began to drizzle, soft but steady, smearing the glow of the siren lights across his windshield. When he reached the complex, 2 officers stood outside apartment 22B. One of them, Marlin, looked shaken. The hallway smelled of mildew and sour air. Peeling paint curled off the walls like paper. "She's in there," Marlin said quietly. "We found her on the kitchen floor." Dale stepped inside. The apartment was dim, lit only by the flicker of a TV playing cartoons on mute. A small figure lay on the cracked linoleum floor. Her hair was tangled, her face ghostly pale, eyes half open. Amaya. She looked smaller than she had sounded on the phone, her thin arms wrapped around her stomach. A worn blanket covered her legs. There were bruises, some faint yellow, others deep purple. Dale knelt beside her. "Amaya, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted, barely moving. I called before," she whispered. Dale's heart clenched. "You did the right thing, sweetheart." "You did the right thing." Behind him, Reed muttered, "Could be old bruises. Kids fall all the time." Dale shot him a look. "Does this look like a fall to you?" Reed didn't answer. A paramedic rushed in, dropping to his knees beside Dale. "Vitals are weak. Looks like dehydration, maybe poisoning. We'll know more once she's stable." Dale looked around the apartment. Empty pill bottles littered the counter. A cracked cereal bowl sat half full on the table. On the fridge, a magnet held up a school drawing, a stick figure family, the girl standing alone in the corner. He turned to Marlin. "Where's her mother?" "Neighbor said she left hours ago," Marlin replied. "Something about work. But," he hesitated, "said the mom's boyfriend was here earlier. Left right before we came." Reed crossed his arms. "You think the boyfriend did this?" "You're guessing. We don't even know what medicine she was talking about." "She said it made her quiet," Dale muttered. His voice carried a mix of anger and disbelief. "That's not medicine, Reed. That's control." Reed shook his head. "You're jumping to conclusions again. Maybe the mom gave her cough syrup, or—" Dale's voice rose, sharp now. "Or maybe nobody listened when she begged for help." The room fell silent. Even the paramedic paused for a moment, glancing up with tired eyes. Amaya stirred faintly, her small hand twitching against the floor. Dale caught it gently. Her fingers were cold. "Hang on, kid," he whispered. "We've got you." Her lips moved again. "It hurts." Inside, the paramedic looked at his partner. "We need to move now." They lifted her onto the stretcher. The moment her body left the floor, Dale noticed something small roll out from beneath her blanket. A white pill bottle with no label. He picked it up, heart pounding. "Get that tested," he told Reed. Reed frowned. "It's probably vitamins." Dale stared at him. "You don't believe that?" Reed didn't respond. He looked away, eyes avoiding Dale's. Outside, the rain came harder. The flashing ambulance lights reflected off the puddles like veins of fire. Neighbors peeked from doorways, whispering. One woman muttered, "She's that green girl." "Always sick, always crying." Dale's jaw tightened. He wanted to ask her what she had done when she heard the cries, but he already knew the answer. As the ambulance doors closed, Amaya's small face disappeared behind the glass. Dale climbed into his patrol car and sat in silence for a long moment, the rain drumming against the roof. His reflection in the rearview mirror looked older than it had that morning. He whispered to himself, "If we had come sooner." The radio crackled suddenly. "Officer Turner, child's condition critical. Transporting to county medical." Dale's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "Copy that," he said quietly. He watched the ambulance vanish into the rain, its siren wailing into the dark. Somewhere deep inside, guilt began to root itself. He thought of her voice, her fear, her plea for help. She had called before. No one had listened, but this was only the beginning. The argument started before sunrise. The glow of morning hadn't yet touched the grey walls of the precinct, when the shouting began. Officer Dale Turner stood at the edge of the conference table, his hands flat against the surface. Papers scattered before him, photos, call logs, and a small, unmarked pill bottle in a plastic evidence bag. The smell of burnt coffee filled the air again, sharp and bitter. "She's in critical condition," Dale said quietly. 9 years old. "Poison in her system. We need to find who gave it to her." Reed leaned back in his chair, his tone dry. "We don't even know what's in those pills. Could be anything. Her mom says she's been sick for weeks. Maybe it's something she got into on her own." Dale looked up sharply. "Did her mom even come to the hospital?" "She called in," Reed replied. "Said she's at work. Didn't sound worried." Dale exhaled, the sound heavy. "A child nearly died and her mother didn't sound worried. Does that not tell you something?" Across the table, Sergeant Miller, a man with graying hair and a permanent scowl, slammed his hand down. "Enough, Turner. You're making assumptions again. We're not turning this into another false alarm fiasco. You remember the Henderson case? We nearly got sued for accusing that white family too fast. And how many kids like Amaya got ignored because of it?" Dale asked. The room went still. Miller's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone." Dale swallowed his anger but didn't step back. "This girl called 911 before. 6 months ago. No one followed up. I checked the logs. We missed her once already," Reed sighed. "Dale, look, I get that you feel bad, but you can't go around blaming the whole department. Kids exaggerate. Families lie. That's not racism. That's life." But Dale's voice rose anyway. "You think she exaggerated the bruises? The poison?" The fear in her voice. Reed looked away, the color fading from his face. The argument circled like a storm cloud. Words like procedure and false alarm filled the air until the truth itself felt trapped beneath them. Through the glass wall of the meeting room, a few officers watched, some curious, others annoyed. One of them whispered, "He's overreacting." They always do when it's one of them. Those last 2 words landed heavy, though said in a whisper. One of them. Dale turned toward the sound, his expression hardening. "What did you just say?" The young officer blinked. "Nothing, sir." "I meant," but the meaning hung there, ugly and undeniable. Before anyone could speak again, a knock came from the hallway. Nurse Nia Coleman stood there in scrubs, a hospital badge still clipped to her chest. Her eyes were tired, her hair tied back, her face etched with quiet anger. "She's alive," Nia said, stepping inside. "Barely. The doctors said the pills had traces of rat poison." Reed's mouth opened slightly. "Rat poison?" "Yes," she said. "Not something a 9-year-old just finds on her own." Dale motioned for her to continue. "Who's with her now?" "She's stable," Nia said softly. "But she keeps saying the same thing, that she told someone before." That nobody believed her. The room went quiet again. Miller rubbed his temple. "Did she say who gave her the pills?" Nia hesitated. "He said it would make me sleep when I was bad." Reed shifted uncomfortably. "We don't know who he is. Could be the boyfriend. Could be someone else." Still not enough to go on. Dale stared at the photograph of the bruises, his voice low and deliberate. "If this were a white child from Lakeview Heights, we'd have detectives at her door before sunrise." Miller's eyes narrowed. "Watch yourself, Turner." "I am watching," Dale said. "I'm watching a 9-year-old fight for her life because we doubted her, because we decided her voice didn't count." The words echoed across the room, sinking deep. For a long time, nobody moved. Nia stepped closer, her voice trembling. "If you all keep waiting for enough, she'll never get justice. How much proof do you need before you start caring?" Her question hung in the air like smoke. Reed finally muttered, "You're not being fair." "We have protocols." Dale looked at him, calm but cold. "Protocols don't bring back trust. They build walls." Nia nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "Then maybe it's time to tear some down. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story." The argument dissolved into silence. Miller looked out the window toward the gray dawn, jaw tight, voice low. "We'll send someone back to the apartment, quietly, no press, no headlines. I don't want another circus." But Dale knew what quietly really meant. It meant delay. It meant doubt. He watched Nia leave the room, her footsteps fading down the hallway. Her courage lingered, but so did the fear that nothing would change. And yet the evidence was waiting in plain sight. They just had to look close enough to see it. Then something changed everything. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the cold, sterile halls. Nurse Nia Coleman walked briskly through the corridor, her shoes squeaking against the waxed floor. Behind her, Officer Dale Turner followed, his badge catching the glare of the lights with every step. Room 203. That was where they had moved Amaya Green. Nia paused at the door before opening it. Her hand trembled slightly. "She's awake," she whispered. Dale nodded, exhaling slowly. The faint beeping of a heart monitor filled the silence as they stepped inside. Amaya lay small and pale against the white sheets. An IV dripped beside her bed. Her eyes, still tired and dull, flicked toward them weakly. "Hey there, sweetheart," Nia said softly, kneeling beside her. "You remember me?" Amaya nodded faintly. "You're the nice nurse." "That's right," Nia said, her voice gentle but steady. "You did something very brave, calling for help." Dale moved closer, setting his notebook on the side table. "You scared us all, you know that?" Amaya gave the smallest smile, then winced. "My stomach still hurts." "I know," Nia said, brushing a curl from the girl's forehead. "The doctors are trying to figure out what made you sick." A man's voice interrupted from the doorway, deep, impatient. "Trying to figure out? We already know what it is." They turned. Dr. Philip Harris, white coat crisp, stethoscope draped neatly around his neck, stood with a clipboard in hand. His tone was clipped, professional and dismissive all at once. "Poisoning," Dale said firmly. "The lab found traces of rat toxin." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "Possibly. But we're not certain of intent yet. Could be an accident. Household contamination, maybe something she ate." "You people jump to conclusions too fast," Nia frowned. "She's 9 years old. There were bruises on her arms and neck. Does that look accidental to you?" Dr. Harris sighed. "Bruises can come from play, nurse. Children roughhouse. It's not unusual." Nia's voice tightened. "Those were not play bruises." Dale stepped forward. "Her mother's boyfriend was seen leaving the apartment right before we arrived. He's been evasive. Doesn't that raise a red flag to you?" The doctor's expression didn't change. "Officer, with respect, my job is to treat patients, not chase your suspicions." "Let's not turn this into something it isn't." Dale's jaw clenched. "Something it isn't? A little black girl is lying in your hospital bed, poisoned and bruised, and you want to talk about restraint." The doctor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Careful, officer. Accusations like that can ruin careers." The words were soft but sharp, the kind that cut while pretending not to. Nia stepped between them. "Enough," she said quietly. "Let's focus on her." But Amaya's small voice broke through the tension. "He said the medicine would make me better," she whispered. Everyone turned toward her. Her voice shook. "He said I talk too much. He said if I keep telling people they won't believe me anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "He said Mama doesn't want me talking to strangers, not even police." Dale crouched beside her, his voice careful. "Who said that, Amaya?" She looked at him, lips trembling. "Mr. Leon." Nia froze. "Leon Parker." Amaya nodded. "Mama's friend. He gives me the medicine when she's gone." Dale's heartbeat quickened. "Do you know what the medicine looks like?" Amaya pointed weakly toward the side table. Nia followed her gaze and found another small bottle. It's identical to the one found at the apartment. No label, just a white cap and faded smudge marks along the side. Dr. Harris cleared his throat, uneasy now. "Well, that could be anything. Vitamins, supplements. Let's not assume—" "Assume?" Nia snapped, turning toward him. "She's telling you what happened. How many more signs do you need before you stop looking away?" The doctor looked uncomfortable, his lips pressing into a thin line. "We'll wait for the lab results." Dale's eyes hardened. "You wait if you want." "I'm not." He took out his phone and called the precinct. "I need a warrant for Leon Parker, immediate." Nia squeezed Amaya's hand gently. "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart." "Nothing at all." But Amaya shook her head slowly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Mama said I shouldn't tell. She said nobody believes little girls like me." The room fell completely silent. Even the monitor seemed to pause between beeps. Nia's eyes glistened. "Oh, baby. They will believe you now." For a moment, no one spoke. The smell of antiseptic, the hum of machines, the flicker of the overhead light, everything felt too still, too fragile. Dr. Harris finally turned away, mumbling something about chain of evidence. but his hands trembled slightly as he wrote on his clipboard. Dale glanced at Nia, his expression grim. If he's guilty, he's not walking away this time. Nia nodded, eyes fixed on Amaya. He almost did last time. Dale frowned. Last time? Nia looked up, her face pale. You didn't know? She was admitted here months ago. Same symptoms, same man. Dale froze, and what Amaya whispered next made even the doctor go pale. This was not the first time. Months before the night Amaya Green called 911, the sun had been warm and bright over the Maplewood Elementary playground. The sound of children laughing filled the air, jump ropes hitting the pavement, sneakers squeaking, teachers shouting over the noise. But in one corner of the yard, a small girl sat by herself, hands tucked beneath her knees, eyes on the ground. Amaya's teacher, Mrs. Lawson, noticed her sitting there again. It was the third day that week. Her blouse was wrinkled, her braids uneven, her lunch untouched. Amaya, Mrs. Lawson said kindly, walking over. You feeling okay, sweetheart? Amaya looked up, her eyes wide, cautious. Yes, ma'am. You sure? The teacher pressed gently. You look tired. Amaya hesitated. Then almost in a whisper she said, He gave me medicine again. Mrs. Lawson frowned. Who did? Amaya's voice lowered even more. Mama's friend. He says it helps me sleep. The teacher blinked, unsure if she had heard right. She forced a small smile. Honey, maybe it's just vitamins. Grown-ups know what's best for you. Amaya nodded, but her small shoulders hunched tighter and she whispered, It hurts. The teacher crouched beside her. Where does it hurt? Amaya pulled up her sleeve just enough for the woman to see a faint bruise near her elbow. Here and sometimes here. She touched her side. Mrs. Lawson's smile faltered. Did you fall? No, ma'am. Did someone hit you? Amaya hesitated. He says I talk too much. The words were so quiet they nearly vanished into the breeze. The teacher's chest tightened, but the bell rang before she could ask more. Children rushed toward the door, laughter echoing across the yard. Mrs. Lawson stood still, torn between instinct and instruction. Later that afternoon, she filled out a note for the school counselor. Possible home concern. Child reports taking medication. Bruises visible. But when she handed it in, the counselor sighed. Mrs. Lawson, it's that green girl again? We've checked on her mother before. She's doing her best. You know how these families are. Lots of stress. Lots of misunderstanding. The phrase these families lingered in the air. Still, Mrs. Lawson insisted. The child seems frightened. The counselor nodded, not looking up from her paperwork. I'll make a note. But unless there's fresh injury, there's not much we can do. You don't want to accuse someone without cause. That can make trouble for everyone. So the note was filed away somewhere between forms and forgotten warnings. That night, Amaya sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The apartment smelled of bleach again. The television played loudly in the other room. Her mother laughed softly at something the man on the couch said. Leon. He was tall and always smelled like smoke and mint. When her mother wasn't looking, he would hand Amaya a cup of juice that tasted strange. Sometimes it made her dizzy, sleepy. Sometimes her body hurt after she woke up, but he would smile and say, Good girls don't make noise. She had tried to tell Mama once. Mama's eyes had gone hard. You stop lying, Amaya. You think I don't have enough to deal with? Leon takes care of us. You don't talk about him like that. The slap that followed wasn't hard, but it broke something deeper, the belief that anyone would listen. At school, Amaya stopped talking. When teachers asked questions, she shrugged. When the counselor smiled and said, You're feeling better now, right? She nodded. She learned to stay silent. Weeks passed. The bruises faded, but the fear stayed. Nights blurred into each other. Leon's visits, the medicine, the quiet. The pain. Sometimes when she was alone, she would stare out the window and whisper, Please, someone help me. But no one ever came. One evening, she heard her mother on the phone whispering sharply, You said she'd stop complaining. You said she'd get used to it. The words chilled her. She crawled beneath her blanket, clutching her teddy bear so tightly it seemed strained. At school the next day, she tried one last time. She told Mrs. Lawson again, this time trembling. It hurts inside. He keeps giving me medicine. The teacher froze, eyes darting toward the hallway where other staff stood. Amaya, we talked about this. Don't make up stories. Adults don't like that. Amaya's throat tightened. But I'm not lying. The teacher straightened, voice low but firm. I know you think that, sweetie, but you have to be careful what you say about people. Sometimes what sounds bad isn't really bad. And that was the moment Amaya stopped trying. When she walked home that afternoon, her steps were slow, her head down. The wind rustled the trees, and somewhere in the distance a siren wailed. She looked up for a moment, wondering if it was for someone like her. But the sound faded, swallowed by the noise of the street. She whispered to herself, maybe they don't help kids like me. And as the sun dipped behind the apartment roofs, she felt that thought settle into her chest like a stone. That night Leon came again. The glass clinked against the counter. The smell of mint filled the air. He smiled as he handed her the cup. Drink up, sweetheart. It'll help you sleep. Amaya stared at the liquid and whispered, I don't want to. His smile thinned. Don't make me tell your mama. She closed her eyes, the sound of her heartbeat mixing with the hum of the refrigerator, and drank. And now the same nightmare was happening again. Finally, someone decided to listen. The soft hum of medical machines filled the quiet hospital room. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long lines across the bed where Amaya lay. She looked fragile beneath the thin white blanket, a small figure surrounded by tubes and beeping monitors. Nurse Nia Coleman stood beside her, chart in hand, but her eyes were on the child's face. She had seen sickness before, pain before, but this was different. This was a silence that spoke louder than words. Amaya opened her eyes slightly. Oh, you came back, Nia smiled gently. Of course I did. How are you feeling? Still hurts, Amaya whispered. They keep giving me needles. I know, baby. But it's helping, Nia said softly, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's forehead. You're safe now. Amaya's lips trembled. Will Mama be mad that I told? Nia hesitated. Your mama should be happy you're safe. That's what matters. But deep down, Nia wasn't sure the girl believed that, and she wasn't sure she did either. A knock came at the door. Officer Dale Turner stepped in, holding a notepad. His expression was tense, his eyes tired but determined. How's she doing? He asked. She's stable, Nia replied. But she's still scared. Amaya's small voice broke the quiet. Did you find him? Dale crouched down beside the bed. Not yet, but we will. She nodded faintly, then turned her face toward the window. The morning light touched her cheek, but her eyes stayed dim. When she drifted back to sleep, Dale stepped into the hallway with Nia. The air outside the room felt heavier. She remembers everything, Nia said quietly. The names, the pills, the timing. She is clear, Dale nodded. That's enough to issue an arrest warrant. But when they reached the nurse's station, they found Dr. Harris waiting, clipboard in hand. Expression sharp. Officer Turner, he said coolly, I understand you're looking to escalate this case. Before you do, you should know there's still no conclusive proof of abuse. Nia's voice tightened. You saw the bruises yourself. I saw old injuries, Dr. Harris replied. Children bruise easily. Let's not jump to conclusions. Nia crossed her arms. You're doing it again. Doing what? He said, almost offended. Explaining away her pain, she said, If this were your daughter, would you still call them old injuries? His jaw stiffened. You're out of line, Nurse Coleman. No, she said calmly. You are. Dale stepped between them. Doctor, we're not asking for your permission to proceed. We're here for cooperation, Dr. Harris scoffed. And you think parading accusations against a respected man will solve this? The child's mother defends him, says you're trying to break up her home. Dale blinked. She defends him. Yes, Harris said, tapping his clipboard. She said Officer Turner exaggerated, that this is all about bias. The word cut through the air like a blade. Bias. Nia's voice shook. You think we care what color he is? We're talking about a child. But Harris didn't answer. He simply said, Be careful, officer. These kinds of cases can ruin reputations if handled recklessly. As he walked away, Nia whispered, He's protecting the wrong person. Dale nodded. I've seen it before. People see a white man in a clean shirt and assume he's harmless. They see a scared black girl and call her confused. The words hung between them, heavy and true. Nia took a deep breath. So what now? We find him, Dale said firmly, with or without backup. Hours later, Dale sat in his patrol car outside Leon Parker's auto repair shop. The morning sun glinted off the broken sign that read, Parker's Auto Works in faded red paint. Through the dirty window, he saw Leon, tall, broad, easy smile, laughing with a customer like nothing was wrong. Dale gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You don't look like a man who nearly killed a child," he murmured. The radio crackled. It was Reed's voice. "Turner, I heard what you're doing. Don't cause trouble. The sergeant wants us to keep this quiet." "Quiet," Dale repeated under his breath. "Always quiet when it's her kind of case, huh?" Reed's tone shifted. "You're seeing ghosts. Not everything's about race." Dale's voice hardened. "Tell that to the girl fighting for her life." He hung up before Reed could reply. Nia's voice echoed in his mind. "She said he gave her the medicine when her mama was gone." He started the engine. Inside the hospital, Amaya stirred again, whispering in her sleep. "Please don't let him find me." Nia stood at the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall. She felt the weight of every silence, every file that had gone ignored, every child who never got this far. For the first time, she felt the spark of something fierce, not just sympathy, but rage. Dale's car pulled into the street, his siren off, his headlights dim. The hunt had begun, but the truth had only started to unravel. A shadow hung over every word. 3 days had passed since Amaya's 911 call, but the hospital halls still carried the echo of her name. Her room had become a quiet war zone, nurses whispering, officers waiting, doctors avoiding eye contact. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the scent of cheap coffee, the kind brewed during long shifts when no one wanted to go home. Officer Dale Turner stood by the window, staring out at the drizzle-covered parking lot. His phone buzzed every few minutes. Reports, calls, excuses, but none that mattered. Nurse Nia Coleman joined him, her arms crossed tightly. "They won't approve the warrant," she said quietly. Dale turned. "What?" "The judge wants more evidence. Says the pills could be an accident. Says the bruises don't prove intent." He clenched his jaw. "Intent? A 9-year-old almost dies and we're debating intent." Nia's voice trembled with frustration. "They said the mother denies abuse. And she's standing by Leon Parker." Dale rubbed his temple, his voice low. "Of course she is. He feeds her, pays the bills. She thinks loyalty keeps her safe." In the hallway, Dr. Harris walked past, talking with another physician. His tone was calm, professional, and distant. Dale watched him for a long moment, wondering how many children he'd seen and dismissed the same way. Nia followed Dale's gaze. "You can see it, can't you?" "See what?" "The way they all flinch when they talk about her. Like she's not one of their kids. Like she's already a burden." Dale nodded. "They see race before they see pain." The hum of the hospital grew louder. Footsteps, carts rolling, a monitor beeping in the distance. Inside Amaya's room, the air felt too still, too fragile. She stirred beneath the blanket, her voice faint. "Mr. Dale." He rushed to her side. "I'm here. Did you find him yet?" "Not yet, sweetheart. But we will. I promise." Her eyes blinked slowly, tears gathering. "He said he'd come back." Nia's breath caught. "When did he say that?" "Before Mama left. He said he'd come back and make me quiet for good." Dale's hand tightened around the side rail of the bed. "You're safe here. He can't hurt you again." But even as he said the words, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. The hospital wasn't guarded, just a few security officers at the front desk, distracted by routine. Amaya's monitor beeped steadily. Each sound was a reminder of how close she had come to being silenced forever. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. That evening, Dale met with Sergeant Miller again. The office smelled of stale coffee and dust, the blinds half drawn against the gray sky. "You're pushing too hard, Turner," Miller said. "We don't even know this guy did anything." "And you're dragging the department into a mess." Dale folded his arms. "Sir, she named him. We found the pills." "We have motive," Miller shook his head. "You have a scared kid's story and an empty bottle." "That's it. Why do you need more?" Dale shot back. "If she were a white child from Lakeview, we'd already have a task force." Miller's eyes narrowed. "Watch it, Turner." "No," Dale said, voice rising. "I'm done watching. We always watch it when it's someone like her, quiet, poor, and black. That's why she almost died." Miller stood. "You're suspended from the case until further notice." The words hit like a blow. Dale stared at him, disbelief spreading across his face. "You're taking me off?" "You're too emotional," Miller said flatly. "Go home. Let the system handle it." Dale left the office, fists clenched. Outside, the wind howled through the parking lot. He sat in his car, staring at the empty steering wheel. The system. That word had become poison too. Back inside the hospital, Nia reviewed the latest lab reports. The toxicology results were delayed. The lab claimed a mix-up in the chain of custody. Another mistake. Another delay. She looked toward Amaya's door, heart pounding. "They're trying to bury this," she whispered. Her co-worker glanced up. "You mean the case?" "No," Nia said, her voice trembling. "The truth." She stepped into Amaya's room again. The child's breathing was slow, steady, but the shadows under her eyes seemed darker. Nia touched her hand gently. "You're going to be okay, baby." Amaya stirred. "They don't believe me, do they?" Nia blinked back tears. "I do. And so does Mr. Dale. We're not going anywhere." Amaya's lips moved faintly. "They said that last time too," Nia froze. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" But Amaya had drifted back to sleep, her small hand still gripping the blanket like a shield. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the window like impatient fingers. Dale's car sat idling under the hospital light. He stared up at the building, determination burning behind his tired eyes. He was suspended, yes, but that didn't mean he was done. He opened his glove compartment, pulling out his notebook. On the last page was a single name, circled 3 times, Leon Parker. He whispered to himself, "If they won't find you, I will." And as thunder rolled across the sky, he started the engine, and the worst was still to come. Soon, the entire community knew by Monday morning. The story of the poisoned girl from Maplewood had spread across town like wildfire. News vans lined the street outside the hospital. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered questions to nurses in the hallways. Everyone wanted to know who had done it and whether anyone would be held responsible, but not everyone wanted to believe the truth. At Evelyn's Diner, the old coffee spot where locals gathered before work, 2 men in work jackets sat near the counter, their voices low but sharp. "Did you hear about that little girl?" one asked. 9 years old, they say." "Real shame." The other shook his head. "Yeah, but I don't buy that story. Leon Parker's a good man. Works on my car every year. Church volunteer. Wouldn't hurt a fly." "Maybe the mom's the one with problems," the first man muttered. "You know how some of these families are. Always drama." The waitress, a young black woman, froze mid-step. Her eyes flicked toward them. "She's a child," she said softly. The second man looked up. "What's that?" "She's a child," she repeated louder this time. "You don't have to believe every rumor to know a child doesn't deserve that." The men looked away, uncomfortable, but neither apologized. Outside the diner, rain clouds gathered again, heavy and gray. The entire town seemed to hum with tension, some siding with Leon, others whispering that Amaya's story was only half true. At the hospital, Nia watched the TV mounted on the wall above the nurses' station. A local news anchor spoke into the camera. "Sources say the investigation into the Maplewood poisoning case has been delayed due to conflicting reports. The suspect, Leon Parker, has not been charged at this time." Nia turned off the screen. Her hands shook. "Conflicting reports," she whispered. "They make it sound like her life's a question mark." Behind her, Dr. Harris approached quietly. "Nurse Coleman, I'd appreciate it if you stopped speaking to the press." "We need to protect hospital integrity." Nia turned to face him. "Protect the hospital? Or protect your name?" His eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone." "I've been watching," she said evenly. "I watched a child come in nearly dead. I watched you dismiss her bruises. I've been watching plenty." Dr. Harris's voice lowered, cold now. "Be careful what you say, Nia. People don't like angry nurses. They call them unprofessional." Nia stared at him, her voice shaking but steady. "People don't like the truth either. But I'm saying it anyway." She walked away before he could answer. Meanwhile, Officer Dale Turner sat in his parked car across from Leon Parker's repair shop again. He'd been there for hours, engine off, watching. Leon moved easily, chatting with customers, wiping his hands on a rag, laughing like he had nothing to hide. Every so often he'd glance at his phone, smirk, and return to work. Dale's partner Reed pulled up beside him, rolling down his window. "You've got to let this go, man. You're suspended." Dale didn't look away. "So you ever watch a man laugh after nearly killing a kid?" Reed sighed. "You've got no proof." "I've got her words," Dale said. And I believe her. That's enough for me. Reed stared at him for a moment, then said quietly, "You're going to ruin your career for this." Dale finally turned his head. "If I have to choose between my career and her life, I'll burn my badge myself." The words hung in the air, heavy as the rain that began to fall again. Reed looked away, his voice softer now. "You can't save every kid, Turner." Dale's eyes stayed locked on Leon. "Maybe not, but I can save this one." He started his car and drove off toward the courthouse, heart pounding. That evening, the tension reached the church on Maplewood Street, the same one where Amaya's mother sang in the choir. The pastor stood at the pulpit, his voice heavy with caution. "We must pray for all involved," he said, "for the little girl and for Brother Leon. Only God knows the truth." Some nodded. Others frowned. And in the back row a woman whispered, "If she were white, they'd have arrested him by now." The room went quiet. Heads turned. No one argued. Back at the hospital, Nia sat beside Amaya's bed. The girl was awake again, staring at the ceiling. "They're talking about me," Amaya said softly. "Yes, baby," Nia said. "But not all of them understand." Amaya turned her head. "Thai's still out there." Nia took her hand, squeezing gently. "They won't be forever. Mr. Dale's working on it." A single tear rolled down Amaya's cheek. They didn't listen before. "Why would they now?" Nia's voice cracked. "Because this time someone's fighting for you." In the hallway outside, a new voice cut through the hospital's noise. A young intern ran up to the nurse's desk, breathless. "Someone just called asking for Amaya's room number. Said he was her uncle." Nia turned sharply. "Did you give it to him?" "No, ma'am." But he sounded angry. Nia's stomach dropped. She looked toward the window. Rain streaked the glass like gray tears, but then a voice cut through the noise. The room erupted. The hospital's conference chamber was packed, officers, administrators, reporters, and 2 city lawyers. The air buzzed with murmurs and the faint click of cameras outside the door. Everyone had come to hear the update on the Maplewood case, though few wanted to face what it really meant. Officer Dale Turner stood at the center table, a folder in his hand and exhaustion written across his face. Beside him sat Nurse Nia Coleman, steady but tense. Across from them was Dr. Philip Harris, his expression tight and defensive. Dale opened the folder and spread out the photos. Pill bottles, lab results, a small hospital wristband with Amaya Green written in fading ink. "These results came in an hour ago," Dale said. "The pills contained bromadiolone, rat poison, administered in small doses over several months." Gasps rippled through the room. Dr. Harris adjusted his glasses. "You're implying this was intentional?" Dale looked up. "No, I'm stating it." Nia slid another document across the table. "This is the lab report from her first hospital visit 6 months ago. The same toxin was found, but the case was marked as no further concern." Miller, the sergeant, leaned forward, voice sharp. "You're saying we ignored evidence?" Nia met his gaze. "You didn't just ignore it. You dismissed it because of who she was." The room went still. Miller's face reddened. "Watch that accusation." But Nia didn't back down. "If she had been a white child from Lakeview, you'd have been at that apartment within the hour. You would have called social services. You would have run tests and you would have believed her." Dr. Harris sighed. "We cannot keep turning this into a racial debate every time." "It's not a debate," Dale cut in. "It's a pattern." He flipped another page. "We have testimony from the girl herself. Consistent injuries, 2 ignored calls for help, and a mother who refuses to cooperate because she's terrified of losing her home. What else do you need?" The city lawyer spoke for the first time. "Proof of intent. Without it, there's no case." Dale's voice rose. "Intent? She's 9 years old." She begged for help. "What more intent do you want? Her funeral?" The lawyer flinched. Miller's hand slammed down on the table. "That's enough, Turner." Dale took a step back, breathing hard. The hum of the overhead lights filled the silence that followed. From her seat, Nia whispered, "They're protecting him." Dr. Harris's voice was calm, almost cold. "You're all letting emotion cloud your judgment. Leon Parker is a respected man in this community. We should not destroy a reputation over a child's confused memory." Nia's eyes flashed. "Confused?" "She remembers the color of the pills, the smell of his hands, the words he used before he gave them to her." The lawyer frowned. "And where is this Leon Parker now?" "Gone," Dale said flatly. "He left town last night. His shop's locked up." Miller cursed under his breath. "How did you let him slip away?" Dale glared at him. Because you suspended me. Because you told me to stop digging. Because everyone here decided it was safer to doubt her than to act. The tension cracked like thunder. Every word felt heavier than the last. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Nia reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper, a handwritten note on crumpled stationery. I found this in her file from her first hospital visit, she said softly. It was tucked behind her discharge papers. She unfolded it carefully and began to read aloud. Please believe me. He said the medicine will make me sleep. I tried to tell the nurse, but she didn't hear me. Please don't let him come back. Her voice broke on the last line. The paper shook in her hand. Dr. Harris's face went pale. The sergeant stared at the note like it was a ghost from his own conscience. Dale whispered. She was crying for help right under our noses. Nia's voice trembled. And everyone called it an accident. A long silence fell. The only sound was the rain striking the windows in slow rhythmic taps. Finally, the city lawyer spoke, her tone cautious. This changes things. If that note can be verified, it could support a criminal charge. Dale didn't look relieved. It's not about charges. It's about responsibility. We failed her once. We're not failing her again. Nia wiped her tears and stood. Then let's start by finding him. Miller rubbed his face. I'll issue an alert, but no promises. The judge won't like this going public. Dale slammed his folder shut. The judge doesn't get to like it. A little girl almost died because of our silence. The door opened suddenly. A young officer burst in, panting. Turner, you need to come downstairs now. Dale's pulse spiked. What happened? It's the hospital security feed, the officer said breathlessly. Someone tried to access the pediatric ward last night. The camera caught him near room 203. Nia's heart stopped. That's Amaya's room, the officer nodded slowly. And you're not going to believe who it was. And then she said the words nobody expected. This was the breaking point. The hallway outside room 203 was flooded with flashing red lights. The security alarm had triggered 20 minutes before dawn, echoing through the hospital like a warning no one wanted to hear. Officer Dale Turner rushed through the doors, his shoes pounding the tile floor. Nurse Nia Coleman followed close behind, her heart in her throat. The elevator dinged, releasing a flood of voices. Officers, hospital staff, and a pale, trembling security guard holding a laptop. It's him, the guard stammered. We saw his face on the footage. He was here. Dale grabbed the computer and pulled up the grainy video. The timestamp glowed in the corner, 3:14 a.m. The screen flickered, a tall figure in a hoodie moving quietly through the corridor, glancing over his shoulder. He paused at the door marked 203. Nia gasped. Leon. The man on the screen leaned toward the door, his hand hovering over the handle. But before he could enter, a nurse appeared down the hallway pushing a cart. He turned sharply, ducked into the stairwell and vanished. Dale slammed his fist against the wall. He was here. He came for her, Nia's voice shook. If that nurse hadn't shown up, I know, Dale said, cutting her off. He would have finished what he started. 2 detectives from downtown arrived minutes later, their tone clipped and dismissive. One of them, Detective Vaughn, flipped through his notebook. We'll put out an alert, but without physical evidence, it's circumstantial. You can't prove intent to harm. Dale turned on him. He tried to enter a child's hospital room in the middle of the night. What more do you need? Vaughn shrugged. You want me to say it? He's not the type. Parker's never had a record. Upstanding guy, good job, no priors. Not the type? Nia repeated, her voice shaking with disbelief. What type is that supposed to be? Vaughn hesitated, then said carefully, You know what I mean. No, Nia said sharply. Say it, but he didn't have to. The silence said everything. Later that morning, Amaya woke up blinking against the light. Her small hands clutched the blanket, and for a long time she didn't speak. Nia sat beside her, eyes tired but warm. Hey, sweetheart, she said softly. You're safe. Amaya's voice came out small and cracked. He was here. I heard his voice. Nia froze. When? Last night, Amaya whispered. He said I shouldn't be talking. That I make Mama look bad. Dale knelt beside the bed, notebook open. Did you see him, Amaya? She shook her head. I heard the door. Then I heard him walk away. Tears welled in her eyes. He said Mama told him to come get me. Nia covered her mouth. Oh, God. Dale leaned closer. Amaya, you did nothing wrong. You hear me? Nothing. Amaya's small shoulders shook. He said nobody would believe me again. The words hit hard. The same weapon that had been used against her all along. Dale looked at Naya. We need protective custody. Now. They rushed to the administrator's office, where the hospital's legal advisor met them with a stack of forms. That kind of order requires family consent or court authorization, she said flatly. Naya slammed her hand on the desk. Her family is the danger. The advisor frowned. I'm sorry, but rules are rules. Dale leaned forward. You'll have blood on your hands if you send her back. She didn't look up. Officer, I don't make the law. I follow it. He laughed bitterly. Funny how that law never protects the ones who need it. The woman's expression stiffened. Are you accusing us of bias? Nia's voice was quiet but unyielding. We don't need to accuse you. We're watching it happen. Hours passed. The rain outside had turned to fog, blurring the world beyond the hospital windows. Inside, the tension thickened until it was hard to breathe. Dale sat in the waiting room, his phone buzzing with updates he no longer trusted. Each message felt colder than the one before. No sighting. No confirmation. Case delayed pending further review. He pressed his palms together, whispering to himself, she's not making it up. She's not. From down the hall he heard crying, when soft, rhythmic, broken. He rose instantly. In room 203, Amaya was awake again, her small body trembling. I want to go home, she whispered. Nia stroked her hair gently. Not yet, baby. Not until it's safe. Amaya looked up at her with wet eyes. Safe doesn't come for girls like me. Nia's throat closed. Don't say that. But it's true, Amaya said. They don't see me. Nia's tears fell freely now. They will. I promise. The door opened suddenly. A young officer entered, his face pale. We got something. Dale turned. What? The officer held out a photo. Traffic camera caught Leon Parker's truck near the hospital last night, 5 minutes before the alarm. Dale's heart raced. That's our proof, the officer nodded. Judge signed the warrant 10 minutes ago. We're going in. Dale grabbed his coat, adrenaline surging. Let's finish this. He looked back at Nia and Amaya. We'll be back soon. I promise you this ends today. Nia held Amaya's hand tighter, her voice trembling but firm. He's going to make it right, sweetheart. He won't stop until you're safe, Amaya whispered. Promise? Nia smiled through her tears. Promise? The rain began again outside, tapping like a heartbeat against the window pane. For the first time, the rhythm didn't sound like dread. It sounded like hope trying to breathe. And for the first time, silence filled with hope. The tide began to turn. Rain poured over Maplewood as the convoy of police cruisers sped down the narrow back roads, sirens low but steady. Officer Dale Turner gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white, his heart pounding with a mix of fury and fear. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting to prove that Amaya's voice mattered. Nia Coleman's words echoed in his head. They don't see her. He had sworn that would change today. At Parker's Auto Works, the metal shutters rattled in the storm. 2 detectives moved quietly through the alley, flashlights sweeping across oil stains and scattered tools. The building smelled of grease and rain-soaked dust. Ready? Dale whispered. Detective Vaughn nodded reluctantly. We'll make it quick. Just don't make a scene. After everything we ignored, Dale muttered. A scene is overdue. He pushed open the side door. The hinges groaned. Inside, the shop was dim, lit only by a single bulb hanging over a workbench. Empty bottles, crumpled fast food bags, and cigarette ashes littered the counter. Then a noise, metal clinking from the back room. Dale raised his flashlight. Leon Parker, this is the police. Step out with your hands up. For a moment, silence. Then Leon's voice, calm but trembling, came from the shadows. You've got no reason to be here. Dale's light caught his face, tired eyes, a smirk that didn't reach his mouth. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped forward. I didn't do anything wrong, Leon said. That little girl's confused. Her mama told me she's always making up stories. Vaughn spoke up. We have evidence of poisoning, Mr. Parker, and a warrant. Leon's jaw tightened. You think because I'm the only man in her house I did something? You people are always looking for someone to blame. Dale's voice cut through the air. We're looking for the truth, and it's catching up to you. Leon laughed quietly. Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it bit you. You're just doing this because I'm not one of your own. Dale took a step closer. No, I'm doing this because she is. For the first time, Leon's confidence wavered. He reached for something on the counter. Too fast, hands up. Dale shouted, gun drawn. Now, Leon froze. His hand hovered over a small bottle, the same white bottle seen at Amaya's apartment. Vaughn moved forward and grabbed it, sealing it in an evidence bag. Inside were a few pink pills, each coated with faint residue. Dale stared at the bottle for a long moment. This is how you made her sleep, isn't it? Leon didn't answer. You hurt a child who trusted you, Dale said, his voice low, shaking with controlled rage. You thought no one would care because she was a little black girl from a forgotten street. Leon's lip curled. Nobody cared before, did they? Why you care now? Dale's hand trembled slightly, but he kept his gun steady. Because I should have cared then. Because I didn't listen when she first called. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Rain battered the tin roof above them, thunder rumbling like judgment itself. When the cuffs locked around Leon's wrists, he didn't resist. He just looked at Dale with a hollow smile. You think this changes anything? Her kind always gets hurt again. That's how it works. Dale's voice was cold. Not this time. Hours later in the hospital, Nia stood by Amaya's bed with trembling hands. The television in the corner played the breaking news. Local mechanic Leon Parker has been taken into custody after new evidence surfaced in the Maplewood poisoning case. She turned off the screen, tears in her eyes. Amaya was awake, weak but listening. Did they find him? The girl asked softly. Nia smiled through her tears. They did. He can't hurt you anymore. Amaya blinked slowly, the weight of disbelief still clinging to her. They believed me this time. Nia knelt beside her, her voice breaking. Yes, baby. They finally believed you. For the first time, Amaya smiled, a fragile, trembling smile that looked like sunlight breaking through a storm. Dale entered quietly, rain still clinging to his jacket. His eyes met Nia's and something unspoken passed between them, a mix of relief and guilt and resolve. He pulled up a chair beside the bed. You were braver than all of us, Amaya. The girl looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted to be safe. You are now, Dale said softly. And I promise. Everyone who didn't listen will have to face what they did. From the hallway, the sound of reporters echoed faintly. The story was spreading, people wanted answers. The town that once doubted her was beginning to question itself. Even Dr. Harris walked by the door, his head bowed, his confidence stripped. For the first time, he didn't have anything to say. Nia looked out the window, the rain finally easing. Maybe this is what justice feels like, she whispered. Dale nodded slowly. It's the start of it. He looked back at Amaya, her eyes half closed but peaceful. Rest, sweetheart, he said gently. The hard part's over, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. The press, the court, the noise. It was only beginning. But the fight was not over yet. The final blow landed. It was a grey morning when the courtroom doors opened, the sound of shuffling feet filling the space like a slow heartbeat. Reporters lined the benches, cameras flashing under the high ceilings. The scent of paper, coffee, and damp coats mixed into the heavy air. Officer Dale Turner sat in the front row beside Nurse Nia Coleman. Both were still in uniform, one wearing a badge, the other wearing quiet courage. And at the center of it all, on the witness stand, sat a little girl in a pale yellow dress. Amaya Green's legs swung nervously beneath the chair, her small hands gripping the wooden edge. A stuffed bear sat in her lap, worn and stitched with love. The courtroom hushed as the judge entered, a tall woman with silver hair and tired eyes. Court is now in session, she said. State versus Leon Parker. Leon stood beside his attorney, clean-shaven, suit-pressed, his face calm but cold. To anyone who didn't know, he looked like a man unfairly accused. But Dale knew better. He'd seen that calm before, the confidence of someone who thought he'd walk away again. The prosecutor, a young black woman named Rachel Jones, approached the bench. Your Honor, we intend to prove that the defendant, Leon Parker, deliberately administered toxic substances to a minor, causing near-fatal injury. The victim, 9-year-old Amaya Green, will testify to that effect. The defense attorney rose. Objection. The child's memory has been questioned. We have medical experts who can show her symptoms were caused by accidental ingestion. Rachel shot back. Accidents do not happen in patterns, counselor. They happen once. She called for help twice. The judge nodded slowly. Overruled, proceed. Dale exhaled, tension rippling through his chest. Nia reached over, squeezing his hand. Amaya's voice trembled as she began. He told me to take the medicine. He said I talked too much. He said Mama would get mad if I didn't. The courtroom was silent except for her voice. Every word seemed to echo longer than it should. What happened when you took it? Rachel asked gently. Amaya's eyes lowered. I got sleepy. My stomach hurt. I couldn't wake up right. Did you tell anyone? I told Mama, she whispered. She said I was lying. A quiet gasp rippled through the gallery. The mother, sitting in the second row, covered her face with her hands. And did you call for help? Rachel continued. Amaya nodded slowly. Yes, I called 911 twice. Why twice? The girl hesitated, her small voice breaking. Because the first time nobody came. Dale's eyes burned. He couldn't look away. Every syllable she spoke was another stone of guilt laid at his feet. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The defense tried to dismantle her story. Amaya, the attorney said softly, you've been sick before, haven't you? Sometimes medicine makes you sleepy. She nodded. And maybe you took too much one day without realizing. No, she said. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't waver. He made me. Maybe you misunderstood. Her small hands tightened around the bear. No, maybe you're scared and your memory... I remember the smell, she said suddenly, like mint and smoke. That's what his hands smelled like. The defense attorney froze. Leon's composure cracked. He shifted in his seat, eyes flicking toward the floor. Rachel stepped forward. No further questions, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward slightly. Mr. Parker, would you like to testify? Leon stood slowly. I never hurt that child. I looked after her, fed her. I'm being punished for helping. Rachel's tone stayed calm. You mean punished for being caught? He glared at her. You people always twist everything. You don't want to see a good man win. The room went silent. You people? The judge repeated, voice low. Mr. Parker, I suggest you choose your words carefully. Leon's face reddened. You think I'm scared of this court? You think anyone will believe her over me? Rachel stepped closer, holding up the evidence bag, the small white bottle still half full. This is what you gave her, isn't it? He said nothing. Your fingerprints are on it, still nothing. The judge's gavel hit once, sharp as thunder. That's enough, Mr. Parker. You'll remain silent until the verdict. Leon slumped back in his chair, eyes dark and empty. Dale exhaled slowly. The tide had finally turned. The courtroom wasn't whispering anymore, it was listening. Nia wiped her tears quietly. She did it, she whispered. She finally made them listen. The judge turned toward Amaya. Her voice softened, the steel in it replaced by something gentler. You were very brave, Miss Green. You reminded this court of something important. Amaya tilted her head. What's that? The judge smiled faintly. That truth doesn't care how small your voice is. It only cares that you use it. Tears rolled down Nia's cheeks. Dale's chest loosened for the first time in days. But even as justice loomed near, they knew the fight wasn't over. Reporters outside were already spinning the story. Some praising her courage, others questioning her mother, and some still calling it uncertain. Nia looked at Dale. They're going to twist this, aren't they? He nodded. For a while. But not forever. The judge lifted the gavel. Court will reconvene tomorrow for final statements. As everyone stood, thunder rolled outside again. Low and distant, Dale turned to Nia. Tomorrow decides everything. And justice finally stood at the door. The world began to shift. The verdict had not yet been read. But something in the air around Maplewood had already changed. The silence that used to cover the neighborhood, the silence of fear, disbelief, and willful ignorance, was cracking, little by little, like glass under pressure. News crews lined the courthouse steps. Reporters called Amaya's name from behind barriers, their microphones trembling in the rain. Across town, neighbors who once whispered began to talk out loud, each retelling of her story sharper, louder, angrier than the last. At Evelyn's diner, the same men who once defended Leon Parker now sat with their coffee untouched. The waitress, the same one who had spoken up before, turned the TV toward them. On screen, the anchor's voice was steady but somber. Today in Maplewood, the trial of Leon Parker continued. Testimonies revealed systemic neglect, that allowed a 9-year-old black girl's cries for help to go unanswered for months. The men said nothing. One of them finally muttered, "Didn't think it was real." The waitress didn't answer. She just poured another cup and whispered, "That's the problem." At the hospital, the mood was different too. Doctors walked quietly through the halls, no longer calling Amaya the case in room 203, but by her name. Even Dr. Harris, stripped of his certainty, stopped outside her door, his clipboard still in hand but his arrogance gone. He didn't go in. He couldn't. Inside, Nia helped Amaya sit up in bed, wrapping her in a soft blue blanket. The child's skin had regained a faint glow, her cheeks no longer ghostly. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" Nia asked. "Better," Amaya whispered. "But I still dream about him." Nia nodded, her voice soft. "Dreams take time to fade, but you're safe now. You hear me?" Amaya looked down at her small hands. "Mr. Dale said people will listen now." "They will," Nia said firmly, "because they can't pretend not to anymore." For the first time, Amaya smiled, a small, uncertain curve of her lips that looked like courage trying to bloom. Outside, Dale stood on the courthouse steps, the drizzle soaking through his jacket. Reporters gathered around him like a circle of noise. "Officer Turner, is it true your department ignored the first 911 call? Are you facing disciplinary action for defying orders? Do you believe race played a role in how this case was handled?" Dale paused before answering. His voice was steady but full of weight. "Yes," he said finally. "It did." Cameras flashed, he continued. "We ignored her because we assumed. We doubted her because we labeled. We delayed because her life didn't look like the ones we're told to protect first. And now a child almost lost everything because of it." The reporters fell silent for a moment. Even the rain seemed to ease. Dale looked out over the crowd. "Racism doesn't always wear a badge or shout in the streets. Sometimes it hides in the pauses, in the disbelief, in the files we don't read. But I promise you, that ends now." He turned and walked back down the courthouse steps before anyone could ask another question. Back in the hospital, Nia stood by the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. She heard footsteps behind her. Dr. Harris entered quietly. "Nurse Coleman," he said. His voice was softer than she had ever heard it. Nia didn't turn around. "What do you need, doctor?" He hesitated. "To say I was wrong." She turned then, eyes steady. "You were." He nodded, shame in his face. "I treated her like a file instead of a child. I saw procedure, not pain. And I'm sorry," Nia sighed, the edge in her tone softening. "You can't fix the past with an apology, doctor. But you can stop repeating it," he swallowed hard. "I intend to." As he left, Nia looked toward Amaya, who had fallen asleep again, her small chest rising and falling under the blanket. She whispered to herself, "She's stronger than any of us." That night, the community gathered outside the courthouse for a vigil. Candles flickered beneath umbrellas as people stood shoulder to shoulder, neighbors, nurses, police officers, teachers, and strangers. Someone began to sing softly, a hymn older than memory. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Voices joined in, one by one, until the whole crowd was singing through the rain. Nia stood among them, her candle trembling in the wind. Dale stood beside her, head bowed. "She changed everything," Nia whispered. "She reminded us," Dale replied. "We failed her because she was black. And now everyone has to face that." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "She's still just a child, and still braver than most adults I know," Dale said quietly. They both looked toward the courthouse steps where the judge had spoken earlier that day, her words still ringing in their ears. "Justice does not erase pain, but it does expose the truth." The wind picked up, scattering a few candles, but the light didn't go out. It danced and flickered, fragile but alive, just like the girl who had fought her way back to being seen. But one question still remained. At last, the truth was undeniable. The morning of the final verdict was cold and clear, the kind of morning where every breath felt heavier, sharper, more real. The courthouse steps, once crowded with anger and doubt, were now lined with quiet faces waiting for justice to speak. Inside, the courtroom was still. Amaya sat in the front row, her small hand clutching Nurse Nia's. Officer Dale Turner stood nearby, his badge polished, but his expression solemn. The sound of papers rustling echoed faintly as the judge entered, and everyone rose to their feet. When the gavel struck, the air seemed to stop. This court finds the defendant, Leon Parker, guilty on all counts: intentional poisoning of a minor, child endangerment and obstruction of justice. Gasps, then silence. Leon's shoulders sagged, his eyes fixed on the floor. For the first time, his confidence was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. The guards took him by the arms, leading him toward the holding cell. But before he stepped through the door, he turned once, his eyes finding Amaya. She didn't look away. There was no fear left in her, only quiet strength. When the doors closed behind him, the judge removed her glasses. Her voice softened. This court also acknowledges its own failure. Systems failed this child. Our duty now is to ensure no child's voice goes unheard again. Her words echoed through the room, steady and final. Nia held Amaya closer. The girl's tiny body trembled, not with fear this time, but with release. "It's over," Nia whispered. Amaya looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "He can't hurt me anymore?" Nia smiled through her tears. "No, baby, he can't." Dale approached slowly, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "You did something powerful, Amaya. You made them listen." Amaya studied his face for a long moment, then asked softly, "Will they believe other kids like me now?" Dale's voice broke slightly. "They will have to." Outside, the crowd had gathered again, but this time they weren't shouting. They were listening. The press cameras focused not on Leon Parker's exit, but on Amaya's. Her name was no longer a rumor whispered in pity. It was a symbol of survival. The mayor had already called for a review of child protection policies. The police department issued a formal apology. The hospital announced new training on implicit bias. But none of those words could erase what had happened. They could only promise to do better. As Dale stepped out into the sunlight, reporters surrounded him again. "Officer Turner, do you feel justice was served?" He paused, looking at the sea of microphones. "Justice is never perfect," he said quietly. "But today it spoke for a little girl who was told her pain didn't matter. And that's a start." One reporter called out, "Do you believe race played a role in what happened?" Dale didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "She wasn't just ignored because she was small. She was ignored because she was black. And if we can't say that out loud, we'll never fix what broke her life in the first place." His voice trembled but didn't falter. The cameras flashed again. But this time, the faces behind them weren't cynical. They were sober, thoughtful, changed. At the hospital days later, Amaya was finally discharged. The halls that once echoed with indifference now buzzed with warmth and care. Nurses stopped to wave, officers saluted. Even Dr. Harris stood by the doorway, his eyes glassy with unspoken regret. Nia walked beside her, one hand on her shoulder. "Where do you want to go first, sweetheart?" Amaya thought for a moment. "I want to see the sky." They stepped outside. The sun was bright and soft, spilling gold across the parking lot. Amaya tilted her face upward, closing her eyes as if feeling the warmth for the first time. Dale joined them, smiling faintly. "You've got a whole world waiting for you now." Amaya turned to him, her voice full of quiet strength. "Then I'm going to make it listen." Nia laughed softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You already did." Later that evening, a small community vigil was held in the park. Children held candles beside their parents. Teachers, officers, and neighbors who once doubted now stood together, silent. Nia spoke softly into the microphone. "Black children's voices must never be ignored. Their pain is not exaggeration. Their cries are not confusion. They deserve to be believed the first time. Every time." The crowd murmured in agreement, heads bowed, candles trembling in the wind. Dale added quietly, "Because when we doubt them, we don't just fail them, we break something in ourselves." The night deepened, the candles flickered, and Amaya's small light glowed brightest of all. The crowd fell silent as her voice, fragile but sure, rose through the air. "Thank you for hearing me. What would you have done if you were in that police station? Comment below." The camera lingered on Amaya's face, her eyes reflecting the candlelight. She smiled faintly, clutching her bear, her voice barely above a whisper. "Some promises hurt, but this one saved my life."